Hey guys, so glad to see all of you today. Sorry, we're a little bit late, but I had a small conflict that came up at the last minute, but I will tell you all about it when I have everyone start joining in. I know we had said 8 o'clock, but we figured you guys are fashionably late anyway. And my darling guest, Mr. Sunil Menon, is always fashionably late. But he is the fashion choreographer himself. So there he is. And hey, I can see you. Can you guys hear me, see me well? I've actually not doing the live from my usual setup, which I usually do from my office. But today I have some guests here today. The house is overrun with people because everyone is back out and I'm still working. So, I mean, Insta Live is my non-work time, but and then I had an appointment that I needed to take care of right before. So hence the delay, but I'm going to go ahead and invite. Sunil, do you want to just throw me an invite? Because today's topic is off the charts. Ikram, I'm sorry, darling, you're going to have to keep your comments and questions to the end because Sunil and I today are going to be talking about rehabilitation in marginalized communities. So, I mean, we're talking about communities, typically trans communities, LGBTQIA communities, generally communities which are on the fringes. And I think a lot of people throw words like rehabilitation around and, I think 4G will hold us in good stead. So I'm going to go ahead and get Sunil here. We can get rocking and rolling. Hi, God bless you. I mean, I find that odd as a handle, but I'm sure your name is something else. But hi, Mahesh.
Hey.
Hi, Sunil. How are you? Good to see you. I was almost like, I was so mad at you when I sent you our creative this morning, which I was hoping to get some credit for, but clearly you were too busy to give me any credit. So
I was busy getting my massages done so that I could reach home in time to do this live
in
because
time.
my signal there was really bad. I saw the time that I said yes was 8:44 and 8:45 is when I was is my time for my massage. So till the last minute I was on the phone. So yeah.
And I love you for that. But let's jump right in because today's topic is something that we have been talking about for a while and always sort of come to, but never had enough time to get into in its
Correct.
entirety, given our previous episodes and stuff like that. So, as the post and the story and all of that says, Sunil and I have always talked about rehabilitation and him more in the context of marginalized communities. And I mean, I think we will take the conversation forward as it flows. But I think there's a lot of, and I think Sunil agrees with me, that there's a lot of misunderstanding about the word rehab and people just throw it around, because it's easy and
It's
it's a
a it's a feel good word. You want to
it's,
feel good. Hey, it's like activism. These are words that have been bandied about so regularly that it's lost its actual meaning and the essence of what that word means. So if I'm going to jump right in and
that's what
are
I
we,
was
are we
waiting for.
good to go?
Yes, we
Okay.
are.
So rehabilitation, like, since I primarily work with marginalized communities. When they say rehabilitation, is basically taking a person, an individual from a marginalized community, and saying, okay, completely disenfranchised, vulnerable person, we create an environment for them and put that person there and say, okay, we rehabilitate this person. So now that individual has to work in the given context that we have presented to them. So we've decided what is good for them. We've decided this is how it works. And whether it's female sex workers, it's IV drug users, I worked with the trans community, the LGBT community. We look at all these fringe society, vulnerable populations, NGOs, and all these feel good agencies come forward and say, okay, we're going to do this for the community, we're going to do this. And then they complain saying that, hey, there's no retention. So the issue is we have jumped to the conclusion that we know what the community needs. We have offered them a job. So usually it's like a job or a placement in some niche NGO, support group kind of situation where, we say, okay, you're not earning much, so you'll take whatever is given to you. right?
Right.
And so there's a lot of presumption in rehabilitation, and that's where the problem lies.
Is
When
that because, I mean, so I have a question here to kind of situate us a little bit. So these people trying to, so we're assuming they're trying to uplift or fix the problem, right? In
and
their,
give them a better opportunity in life, and say like, okay, uh, because they can't, they don't have all the opportunities. They're born on the wrong side of the stick, or what we say is really stacks the odds are stacked up against them, and they don't seem to be making it. So it's really a tough call for them to survive every day. So we decide, okay, let's give them a job. So maybe like we set up a coffee shop, or they say, put them as a waiter here, or as a small admin staff, office boy. We try and fit them in, because the agencies that do it also have a problem. Most of them are not qualified enough to get a good job. So
I
if
see.
you're not qualified enough to get a good job, then the jobs that we get offered, I get all these calls. The jobs that are offered are always very low end, blue collar, low end, low paying jobs. So for a sex worker, it doesn't make sense. She'll make that money in 2 days or 3 days of sex work. How do you expect her to change her lifestyle overnight and say, okay, I'm going to give up all this and just work for 8,000 rupees or 7,000 rupees? These are realistic salaries in today. We still pay 7 and 8,000 rupees. My staff are paid that. So let's be honest.
Really? I mean, and
Yes,
this is for office admin work or
this
whatever.
is this is we're supported by the Tamil Nadu state government, and there's a budget that is given. So unfortunately, whether your A grade city where your cost of living is high, or your B grade city, I don't think that has really made much of a difference, because
Right.
the salaries are very low. To
Right.
motivate community members to come forward and work in an organization which is so demanding, the work is extremely demanding and emotionally draining.
Right.
And to offer them 7,000 rupees, and then they say, oh, travel is 1,000 rupees. Travel is 1,000 rupees in a city like Chennai. What can you do in a month?
No, you exactly. Your travel every day will become 30K then. Just then you're in 27K
No,
of
no,
deficit.
no. Like you get a bus pass or a train pass or whatever, it's a lot of. So we have assumed that this will work, right?
Now, is this
And
rehabilitation? I mean, sorry to I just want to understand the nuances of it. Is this only from an employment perspective, or do they come in from, say, providing therapy, or, because these people are very, I mean, I'm assuming there's a lot of trauma involved, physical, emotional.
absolutely. So that is missing. So when you say rehabilitation, most NGOs and agencies jump to the conclusion that we'll give them a job, take them off the streets, give them a job, and then we've done our good part, a good Samaritan deed for the day or whatever, and so we give them a valid paid job. Now the question is, have you first of all sensitized the work environment where this individual is coming into?
Right.
No, right? Will they know how to deal with the person's idiosyncrasies and mood swings, or whatever issues and trauma that that person has had, when he or she comes into an workspace where you're trying to rehabilitate and change their lifestyle? Basically, it's changing their lifestyle. So if I was a sex worker, I was a drug addict, I was a trans person doing sex work or begging, whatever, I'm living on the friends society, or if I'm a trucker or a pimp or a broker, whatever, wherever I come from, and I'm seen as living on the fringes, my work is not 9 to 5.
No,
I
it's
don't
not.
get a regular pay. So when you come from that background, there's this whole insecurity. So you live life on the edge. There's a price to pay for it. So you're mentally, all these people are wired so stressed out and so differently than a regular human being going to work every day, getting up, taking a shower, packing your bag, going to office with your little tiffin, and then coming back in the evening. No, these lead extremely erratic and chaotic lives. For them, for instance, how do you give employment to somebody who doesn't have a residential address? How?
Oh my God. Are you saying, like, many of them just don't are homeless? I mean, is that what we're talking about?
they're constantly moving because the landlords will have a problem. They'll say, oh, you're creating so much noise. And then they shift to another place. You have to pay higher than the regular people would pay for the rent. So even so, basically, when your social entitlement cards are not in place now, Tamil Nadu is the only government that has done it. If you look at it, look across the country, we're the only state to have done made sure that every trans person, I'm specifically talking about trans person, has an ID card. We've got flats, tenements, tenant allocation of flats for the trans community.
Right.
To the last I know, when I was in Chennai, 285 trans people availed of a free flat in a housing board colony from the state government.
And do they end up staying there, or do you see the
Yeah.
same, that do they rent it out somewhere and go back to where they used to live? Because
most of them, see, because no. So the NGOs are invited to sit through the process of selecting who gets what, and then we are primarily looking at trans women who don't have a profession, don't have an income, a regular income. They're much older. They settle down. They can't really go around doing any kind of work, so they want to just be at home and look after their kids. So this is where.
Can you explain their kids to me, because I'm a little confused?
Okay, so in the trans community, there's a mother. It's a matriarchal system where the mother, the trans woman, the eldest trans woman, will adopt younger trans women as her daughters, and they live as a family unit, and they support each other, and it's an amazing self-preservation model.
So my question is, so even from an NGO perspective or government perspective, it makes sense to settle these women because they will continue to take others under their wing, and we're looking at perhaps a multiplicative effect of settling, more than just one individual.
Giving them permanence, basically giving them permanence so they're not all over the place. And even for us, because as an NGO, we want to look at health. So before COVID, we were looking at TB, apart from HIV and STI. So we're looking at, the problems with eyesight in older trans women. So we had an eye camp for them. Then we do basic health checkups. So it's easier for us because we know where they are. They're living
So I want to kind of get to the root of sort of the the hashtag rehabilitation. Now, there are obviously different kinds, and marginalized societies are a very, very large sort of subject. And I know that you have experience not just with trans or LGBTQIA or AIDS, at risk with AIDS, or addicts or whatever, because AIDS has been a huge part of your work, and there are so many different fringe communities that unfortunately are within your realm of work are directly
at-risk populations, they're called,
impacted by it. So I wanted to kind of understand, do these, and now this isn't the 90s, now we're in 2021, there's a lot more information, but there's also enough equal amounts of misinformation. So what I wanted to understand from you is, do these people, these so-called, these bodies which are doing good work, so to speak, do they understand the coping skills and life skills, which, you were mentioning earlier, that these people practically don't have from both sides? One is that the environment understand who's coming into it, and the other is they themselves don't understand what basic coping and life skills are. And and nowadays we can see, as conversations go forward, emotional and mental health is so directly related to productivity, as opposed to just ki khana khao and just eat,
hit the gym
over your
so not just physical health.
Yeah, so can we talk about, so do you really feel like, the people or the agencies that are so-called doing rehabilitation really understand the extent and the entire ecosystem to which the work needs to be done? Because, you've really been someone who walk the talk, and I always say that.
If you come from an NGO background, a lot of us know what we're doing. And we know that this is a huge issue, that for us, we have to start at the root of the problem, And for us, especially in Sahodharan, when, large MNCs call us and say, we have this job vacancy, we want to fill it with somebody from the community, we'd like to reach out to us. We are not able to send
their diversity target. Is that why they try to?
Inclusion, diversity is the key word now. So I've been doing talks with MNCs also during Pride Month. So it's very heartening to know now that it's changed. The political Atmosphere is changing. They're a lot more open. They're willing to learn. They want us to come and give talks to them, make them understand the issues, so that when they have an LGBT person in their workspace, it's easier. All that is there. So they are open now. But my problem is I don't have technically qualified individuals to fill in those spaces. And apart from that, do they understand that these individuals are highly sensitive and emotional beings because they've gone through a lot, and the gravity of that situation is only understood once they bring them into the workspace, and then suddenly they realize within a month or two that individual has dropped out. And then they say like, hey, look at this community's, the members from this community are very unprofessional, they don't deliver. They'll say, hey, yes, I want to come on board and work and do this. They'll be very excited in the beginning, but at some point emotionally it's a big it gives in. They give in, and they become, like you said, you have to be emotionally and mentally sound to be very productive, and not just a physical aspect. And for them, they might be physically fit and qualified, but their emotional well-being is where we really have to start. And this is something that I've been tackling over the years, past 20 years. And it's heartbreaking for me because I see extremely talented kids in the community, and I've not been able to do justice, as in try my best, because I know at the end of the day, they cannot see themselves through the whole process of, working for say 10, 15 years. If they work for 1 year, I'll be extremely grateful if they can pull it through, because there's so many things that go on. The children, the individuals that come from a very solid family background, they live with their parents, they are the only ones who will pull through.
Interesting.
Now, none of the individuals that I work with, 95% of them are on their own.
So there's nobody to come home to and, sort of bounce off, oh, this happened today. Do you feel like that's what's missing? Because I wanted to put in just a question here as we move forward, because it's very interesting what you're saying. And I, because I have a corporate background, I know at the end of the day, I look at attrition numbers, okay? At the end of the day, I will give a mandate saying, please hire from XYZ background because I'm a publicly listed company, and we want to, it's not that we don't want to in our hearts be part of a movement or a change, but we do, and then we put out a mandate and somebody carries it out. Now at the end of the day, senior management doesn't come to know who is who in the system and whatever. And if repeatedly we get a source from a certain place where that is where the attrition is coming from, at the end of the day it's a number at the end of the day. So and so then the typical things, that the questions that we would ask is, rather than be like, where is the genesis of the problem, would be like, are they not coming on time? Are they not delivering the results? Now tell me, is this a disconnect of discipline, or is it a disconnect of just maladjustment, or a disconnect of not having emotional therapy? Like there isn't a social support system, or a mix of all of it? Because you do see the other side of the wall. How far can, where do the twain meet is my question.
You've answered your question. The question itself, you answered yourself. So the issue is, like you said, if they don't come on time, some days they may not just turn up. Some days they may not even pick up their phone call. It's because they're going through issues. Like for instance, if I'm trans and I'm transitioning and I'm on meds, hormone pills can play havoc with you. Your emotionals are highs and lows. You never know when you're going to be fine and when you're not going to be okay. And for such a person to be working in a job that is highly pressurized, where you have, like your corporate, you have deadlines, you have to finish assignments on time. We don't care if you do it at 10 in the night or 5 in the morning. Who cares? As long as it's there, it's ready, and it's done well. So when you have such a high pressure job, for me, it's like it's a dream come true if I can actually find individuals who can fill those posts. And if the only possibility, and I've seen this time and time again, it is from individuals who have a solid family backing. I am here today because of my family, very honestly. I am out and open and doing my work for the past 30 years because my family
But you
supports.
have a phenomenal work ethic. You know what I'm saying? Like dealing with the, like I've worked with you in a personal capacity, in a professional capacity. We have, you've been kind enough to felicitate me. Like, I mean, but I can always say that I've only learned and I've only been a role model for, I've never seen you as anything but high performing. Now, while I understand that we can take, the society should absorb. So my question is, are there certain kinds of jobs that are just off the table and that we should look for, there are certain industries.
Easier job. Yeah.
Easy. I mean, I don't want to use the word easier, but it's easier if you use it and I don't use it.
No, because I see the thing is also, this is where HR has a tough task. HR will have to sit down with these individuals and really go through their history, see where they're coming from, what are their flaws, how well can they perform, in which capacity, how well you can utilize their potential, and given the fact that you really don't know, every day you got to like, okay, let's hope this individual comes in on time. And like you said, discipline is an issue. Discipline is, it's an issue because their life, there is no regimental routine.
And that's
There's
never
nothing.
been the case, is what you're saying.
Yeah. So the moment they leave their families and they're out there on the streets on their own and living with their other community members, I'm talking specifically about trans people and even with sex workers, there is no timing. There is no time. What they do is, completely, it's very organized. It's just they get up, they do their work, whatever housework, then they go for sex work, whatever. So even if they're qualified and they have the capacity to work in an office, their body, everything, the mind, body, the lifestyle has made them so attuned to a different rhythm that for them to come into a job 9 to 5, clock in those hours on time, every time, will be like, it takes a lot of personal effort. So now the issue is, what I put forth is, let the individual come forward to me and say, I'm willing to make this effort.
So rather
it has to
than
come
to
from
say,
them.
okay, you want to be you, I'm going to rehabilitate
So
you.
yes, so recently there was this case where this trans person, she's an engineer, and a friend of mine wanted to give her a placement, and this is with the Chennai Metro, because the Chennai Metro has taken on trans women in one of the metros. So there are 11 trans persons working at the Chennai Metro at one station. So she said, since this one girl is an engineer and she's qualified, she's intelligent, why doesn't she come on board? But that girl never came on board. This is the same girl who was put in a mental asylum for conversion therapy. So you know where she's coming from. She can be an engineer. So this is something I can't tell this. I can't say this to my future possible employer, saying that, because this is confidentiality, right? Breach of confidentiality. I cannot expose a person's history.
Correct.
So how do I go about it? So this is just one example
and
where I have failed.
Particular example, and the reason I want to, because I think it's very interesting that you brought up, because it's always easier for even the people who are watching to know when it's anecdotal, they are able to wrap their heads around exactly what we're talking about. So this individual, you're saying, like, didn't show up at all? Like, she didn't think.
No, she kept. So every time the call came, she wouldn't pick up the call. She didn't even go for the interview.
Because she was a huge opportunity to somebody like me, but then again, maybe I'm looking at it from a very normal lens.
For us, for me, it was like, you're representing the community. You will be a role model. Right. See, it's all fine for me to decide. I'm deciding for her. I'm not in her shoes. Her everyday life is the question mark.
But getting this job would make her everyday life not a question mark. Yes? No? Would be less of a question mark.
Her job is confirmed. She will do it from whatever shifts were given. She'd do it. No doubt about that. But for her to get to her work every day, what she's gone through emotionally, what she's gone, the trauma that she's gone through, it is hard. Like I always say, the classic example of, this very beautiful earthen pot breaks. We stick it together with Fevicol and glue, and we get the same shape. We get the semblance of the same thing. We can paint it and look perfect from outside, but the cracks are still there. And this is how fragile the minds are. And, because all of us from the LGBT community at some point have gone through varying degrees of issues that are similar. I will not even compare mine to any of the people that community members that I know and worked with, because mine is inconsequential considering what I've seen them go through. So this is my problem. So how do we explain this to a large MNC when they call and say, this is a perfect opportunity, Sunil, to for you to send individuals, and I get this regularly. So it's this pressure on me, and it's like, maybe we should sit down and talk first. And they don't have the time. Which huge company will have, okay, let's sit down and talk about LGBT issues and let's sort it out and see how we're going to work this around and what it entails to bring somebody on board into this workspace from the people that you work with. So I now have to look at upper middle class or upper class educated trans or LGBT people who already have a solid background, education,
but
everything going.
But they would really need you, because they would,
exactly.
they're not the ones who
they're pending for themselves anyways. They don't come to us.
I'm so interesting. I wanted to sort of just chime in here because, we were talking about HR, and I think there are HR people and practices and that I've seen who do the sitting down and the understanding and the allocation. What happens is, over a period of time though, what happens is that we start expecting the same from them as we do from anybody else. Like expecting me like 6 months down the line to remember your medical history when my targets are not being met is even if I am the world's most empathetic human being, and I also have my own history of trauma and PTSD and whatever, and I've dealt with it and come through it, and I work in extremely highly competitive and highly performance oriented environments, but I do come from a very supportive family system, and I have gotten the help that I need.
The privileges that you and I have are so different. That's the thing.
Right. So my
just the emotional support that we get is enough.
Yeah. So my question to you is, I see where the corporates are coming from in their intention. And in that, but and I see where you're coming from in terms of wanting to rehabilitate. And it is a phenomenal opportunity. Imagine if this girl actually
because for me,
did that.
I like to be honest. I can just send the applications and say, okay, call this person, and give 5 or 6 and feel good about it. But I know it's not going to come through. So I want to be 100% sure that this individual will go through.
But how do you make sense of the cost benefit analysis? Okay, at the end of the day, this is a developing nation, and I am one of the biggest proponents of mental health, and and I've been your disciple for years now. So I think that the work that you've been doing is amazing, and you've pushed through. I mean, times are now, people are listening, you know what I'm saying, but you've done this at a very dark time when no one even knew what these things meant. But
no social media, no internet, nothing.
None of that. But the cost benefit analysis of, for this one person to succeed, what it will take out of, any kind of organization, big or small, given that you have still, let's say we have 100 people and we have one of these people and 99 of the rest of them are still normal with their own problems. I don't want to use the word normal loosely, but let's just say not fringe or not marginalized. They themselves come with their set of problems. Now, at the end of the day, what is the cost benefit analysis of this one success? And, and what's unfortunate is that I can still, and, I don't speak for any organization, but I'm just saying from a corporate perspective, tomorrow I end up in Wharton, I will, I could end up on the diversity council, because I know that I was picked for my diversity. So at least one of the reasons was that. So at the end of the day, if this person comes and works for 6 months and goes, okay, I can show that I had this one person working in this financial year, right? So you know what I'm saying? So there are lots of, and it's very...
So it's tokenism. So this inclusion diversion becomes tokenism. You just tick off that box saying, okay, this is also covered, this area is covered. And they'll just tick it off and say, yes, we tried, it didn't work. This is how the community works. And they're very unreliable and unprofessional. And this will come up time and time and again. And
so who is the onus on? I mean, I was waiting to come to this. So who is the onus on to make it work?
So the onus is on groups like ours. They expect us to come. And like I said, it took me years to heal myself, to come to a position now and say, like, I can talk on any subject openly honestly, without feeling any inhibition, about myself, my past, whatever. But it took time. And for me, it was easier than for most of the people. And I reiterate that I only work with marginalized and lesser privileged community members, because the ones, like I said, you yourself said, if you're privileged, they can fend for themselves, right? So they don't need to come to us.
Okay, so in your opinion, just to kind of understand now, in your opinion, in a hypothetical situation, what would be an ideal or close to ideal role that one would provide, which with the least chance of failure for someone like this? Like, definitely
do like a trial,
for sure.
So if the MNC is willing to give a trial period of 3 months and see how they learn to fit in, learn to let that person fit in and adjust and into the new space, and see that if it's working, and take this as a gamble. So like they're willing to accept the fact that this may not go through. Then, and you don't put pressure on me that, yes, this has to go through, this has to work. And, it's like I am this whiz kid. I'm going to come up with these individuals and applicants who can fit in those positions and say that they're going to at least work through 1 year or 2, Even then, it's not.
I have a point, and I want to sort of see from a leadership perspective. We manage teams, okay? So even in under a normal scenario, a person who causes friction in a team or doesn't promote collaboration itself is a huge discussion point. And half the time, 2 years that we spend in B school is literally how to manage people. It's not like even where we already know how to crunch the numbers. That's why we got in. But literally for the next 2 years, we're going to have to deal with dissent, assent, getting multiple the people to work together. And these are not marginalized communities. So my question to you is, how far do you, so when you say, okay, 3 months, agreed. So what would be your ideal kind of path of least resistance job, which would not impact the firm or wherever they're going into, where this person can have their trial run and we can see how it plays out? Because because the minute they come into contact with others, you put an entire rest of the team also on the line, right? For their success, which is not what they signed up for.
So there's a lot of prep work to be done. For one, the individual should actually, if you ask me, hypothetically go through a counseling session, a series of counseling sessions. So the counselor decides, is this person capable enough to cope with the stress of a 9-to-5 job, like a proper job? Right. Is this person cut out for such a job? And can we work on, or can we work on this individual to get that person to that point where he or she can step into an office and say, I'll give it a shot.
I mean, these gentler jobs, and I don't want to use the word gentle loosely, but I'm saying
something less stress.
Something retail, like somebody who's serving at who's at a boutique where you don't have 100 people walking in, you have 10 walk-ins a day, or maybe showing some jewelry, like kuch bhi. I'm just saying something a little less, not interfacing with 100 other people who are going to be constantly judging you. And I mean, I'm not talking about hardcore corporate, but in your mind, do you think that there are certain sectors which perhaps would be more ideal, where these discussions would perhaps see more success? Or because MNC is still a very large umbrella term, and MNC in general.
Yeah, if you're looking at small establishments, the issue again is the income. So they'll give you very small salaries. And if you're a sex worker, your money is far more than what you'll make at a regular job. catch-22 situation. They want the dignity of a 9 to 5 job. They want to be go into a nice, safe environment to work, but they're used to a certain kind of income because trans.
Can you
I'm
tell
only
us
talking
what
about
that
trans
is?
people.
Can you
High,
tell us what that is? What that, I
so
mean,
if
everybody on this
like
chat probably wants to ask.
hypothetically, if a regular job in a shop, say 10 to 15,000 is what a
Yeah,
person will get, right? It's a realistic amount.
yeah, yeah.
Now, a sex worker can make that in 3 to 5 days.
At immense personal cost and emotional.
Correct. At immense personal risk also, right?
Are they
But
cognizant of that?
they are. So, how many of them are willing to see again? There's peer pressure. So, you should understand a trans person does not live in alone. She's part of a social fabric, which is a matriarchal system. And if she alone comes out, and this has happened, steps out and says, okay, I'm done with this kind of lifestyle. I want to change. I want to get a regular job. There's pressure from the other saying, oh, so you want to become the good one? So we're
Oh.
all the bad people. Everyone looks at, so if you can change, why can't we all change? So this is a question that's thrown at the trans community constantly. Why are you doing sex work? Why are you begging? Why can't you get a regular job? Why can't you live like other people? It's easy to throw these questions at them, but do you know what their life is all about?
So
Like
I'm
Sabita said,
asking you, why is it difficult? I'm completely empathetic, but I want you to explain to me why collectively this is not something that they would choose.
okay, so if I'm getting a good job, I mean, a decent job, whatever, I need a space to live in safely and continuously. I can't be
Correct.
asked to shift every 6 months, 1 year. So if that happens every regularly, imagine the state of mind you're in, the
Correct.
stress that individual is on, where you don't even know how long you can survive in that one particular space. Then the blackmail comes in where the landlord will say, Acha, you want to stay for 1 more year? Then pay me more. And they just unrealistically increase the money,
And you feel that they're being targeted by these landlords and all that because they know
they're
that they're
targeted by
already
everybody. Wherever they go, they're targeted because they are so vulnerable, they have no choice. So, even for example, in a slum, this is where I went and did a story on one of the trans women that I was interviewing. So there's the good part of the slum and there's the seedier part of the slum. The only option is to live in the seedier part. And they pay more rent than a regular slum dweller would. Yeah. Because they'll say, the village head will say, listen, you're trans, you will attract a lot of, unruly elements coming to your house in search of you, drunk, and we live in families, there are children and women here. We don't want all these men coming, searching for you in the daytime or at nighttime. There's a security issue. So we're not very, comfortable with you living in our midst. So if you do, you live by our rules. And these are the conditions.
and these
Now,
guys
where
make
is
more money off of them just to.
So where is the option of going into a middle class setting where you go into a proper house and rent? Now that has changed. So now the past few years, it has changed because the trans women are willing to pay higher for a better living space, but it's at a cost. If I pay 5,000 rupees for a room, a trans person will pay minimum of 7 to 8,000.
Oh my God. So just to
Because
be
it's
who they are, like, it's almost like paying for existing in your skin, like as
exactly.
whatever
So
kind
if
of
the
middle.
basic right to housing, if your basic right to housing is a question mark, where is your life panning out after that? Forget employment, forget anything else.
So do
Because
these people, so do you at Sahodran, do you guys have like support groups, like group therapy, like talk therapy? I mean, I understand that there's obviously a huge, immense trauma, like we mentioned in the beginning. And, there's so many different kinds of trauma. But with my own experience in trauma, I know that like, group therapy is something that is highly recommended, especially in the earlier, when you're recovering from physical trauma, like after my accident or whatever it is, or like, I know people lots of people who have, and who don't just individually see therapists, but try and group therapy. I mean, seems to have a lot of place. So, is that something that works, or not really, or they're not
See, for
comfortable?
them, to come in for group therapy, first of all, every day for them, the everyday life is tough enough for them to spend time allocated for group therapy, come into the center and say, okay, yes, we'll come and sit 1 hour with you and see how we can sort out our lives and all that. They're like, we're fighting our own battles every day. We'll manage. We're trying to cope with that. We won't have time. They won't have time to come in and sit and spend time talking through with these issues, because it's painful for them to revisit the traumas.
But you do know that that's the only way through it, right?
For them, it's it's an issue. It's like we don't want to. We just want to live. So that's why a lot of them are under the influence of some substance, whether it's alcohol or tobacco. So this is another issue. So how do you recommend or try and get somebody work if these are issues around that lurk? We don't even know. You may not
use the term gateway drug. I mean, I'm just saying that, especially, I mean, and because we are talking about rehabilitation, even from a marginalized community, and you're saying that, substance is perhaps something that gets stacked on because as a coping mechanism. And typically it is something that exists along with multiple other traumas. So it's likely that a significant subset of the people that you work with are also dealing with like substance dependency, which doesn't help you when it comes to employment or anything like that.
Significant numbers are on it. Yes, I would say significant.
So at Samudra, do you have any rules? Like, how do you? I mean, I know you obviously
we have strict rules. At my center, when you drop in, you can't be under the influence of any substance. If you're clean, you walk in. If you're coming in with
and this is
under the influence, yes. So then we say, sorry, can you come some other time? And the rules are stuck on the wall, so these are the rules of the center, because we want to maintain decorum and some sort of peace. We don't want any skirmishes and verbal fight.
Sad, Sunil, but however, you and I have been eternal optimists, and I think that's what makes us the close friends that we are. That it just
I'm still at it at 55.
You are indeed, and I'm still Insta living with you. Even though I have to leave in 2 weeks and I've not packed a stitch, but I would rather do this with you than look at a suitcase. So it's. But I wanted to it just seems like such a sad story of running from something. Do you feel like they're just constantly just running and this is just an escape until one day it's all over? Like, because somebody's died?
Because they're so damaged, they're so far gone. For them to pull them back, it's physical. It's an individual need or desire that they really need to pull them. And of course, there has to have a support system. There has to be a support system, and they don't have a support system. When all your colleagues...
So I'm sorry to ask a very basic question. I know that I'm very familiar with your work and whatever. So at Samudran, is it possible to live in a dorm along with the rest of the people, or that's not like something that you've thought about?
We have a short stay home. The Chennai Corporation has given us a building. This is a short stay home near Iga, where trans women who don't have a space to live in, and I think there's a maximum number of days that you can use a short stay home, and it's completely run by the trans community.
Okay, so this is they have that like a halfway house, right? When people are
so if you've asked to pack up and leave, you can come into the center and sort it and be there till you sort out your next location that you want to move to.
So it's not, it can't be more than what, 2 months, 3 months, or
no, not even no months. I think it's 20 days, 3 weeks.
Do you think that this would that group living is, I mean, apart from the matriarchal setup, but a group living, group therapy, group somewhere where they can like go out, work, all stay together, is that even something that you feel MNCs could invest in just to create an sustainable ecosystem, or you feel like that's too much to ask, or that's some
See, what is daunting for these individuals is to be singled out because they're qualified for a particular post and then go into an environment which is completely alien to them. If there were other members along with them, it would have been a little easier. See, the Chennai Metro was smart. They hired 11 individuals. They're all in the same railway station.
Super. Yeah. And so
So they're there to support each other and feel whole hand. They feel safe. So, and then slowly we'll integrate them into other stations. Push them, once they settle in, they feel comfortable, they're used to the routine of the work that they're doing at the metro station. Then we can say 3 can go into another station, 4 or 5 can go to the next station, like that. Split them so that they get a lot more confident as they go. But that's the first.
I want to ask you one thing, and this is, I know, a very burning question. I'm sure that there are people here on chat who would want to ask you that. How much of this needs to come from them and how much of this needs to come from us?
See, from us, there's only so much you can do. You
know what I'm saying? I can't completely change.
Absolutely. The weightage of the work is on the individual. And if you don't understand their backstory, you're wasting your time. Sometimes, but I feel it's not a waste of time. It's never futile because you give everybody a shot. So what is humanly possible within a small group like ours at Sahodran and Tori and my sister concerns, Snehigidi and ITI, what we try to do in our small capacities, we reach out to a few individuals who we see that glimmer of hope in wanting to change, wanting to do something. You see that fire in them, and then you pick them up, and then you give them the support that they need, and see them move forward. And that has been amazing. We've been able to do that with some individuals, and that's our success story. But again, what I've seen primarily with the community is their comfort is in working in a social organization where there are LGBT people. So they want a sense of, oh, I belong here, not like I'm an outsider trying to fit in.
No, I agree with you. And I think that, the juxtaposition here, I mean, and what's interesting is because I've been,
you've known question asked, the work is for us to do. That's the problem. And when you have very structured individuals and very broken, I use these very dramatic words because there's no other way to describe it because I know them. On the outside, they are fun, they're fabulous. You always see them, smiling and having a great time. But each one has a bigger heartbreaking story than the other. So you really, what you see is just a facade.
And that's a coping mechanism, right? I mean, they have to.
That's a coping mechanism. So what people see, what the public sees, is this very strong, sometimes hostile, sometimes arrogant individual who is belligerent or defiant or whatever, and said, look, why can't they work? Why can't they do this? And it's just a defense mechanism, so which they don't realize that. And I have had to sit with them and say that, if you really want to win them over, win society over and make them understand us and help us you have to help them understand us. So we have to change. We have to tone down. We have to meet halfway. We really have to meet halfway. And then open them up to our world. Let them see what we are going through. That's the issue. Because we, like I said, all of us come to the table thinking we know what the person wants. And it is that, see, I don't blame anybody here. The onus is still on the community. It is on us. But if you look at the root, it is because at a very young age, family, education system, society around did not accept them. Pushed them out. Treated them like outcasts. So when you have no self-esteem, I went through that. Such low self-esteem, you don't feel worthy, you don't feel good enough. When you go through that, some of us, like I read this article where it resonated, it said, a lot of us are overcompensating.
Oh.
We do multiple things because we want to make up for this one issue we don't want anyone to look at. So if I'm LGBT, I will do well academically, I will do well in extracurricular activities, theater, sports, whatever. So I'm the ideal child, the parents are happy, everybody's happy, but deep down, I'm guarding the secret that I have. And I'm scared that one day everything, all this will be inconsequential the moment they find out, oh, I'm LGBT. So the awards that I won, the certificates and medals that I won will mean nothing to them. That's how vulnerable people are. See, like when I say again and again, when you come from a position of privilege, we take a lot of things for granted. I faced it. As simple as when I talk about renting a space. I went to this house landlord saying that, can I rent a space? I saw a to let board. He said, oh, I'm so sorry, sir. We just, some, IT professionals came and looked at the space and they paid the advance. So I said, oh, okay. And this is a gentleman who knows me because he had a small internet cafe in his house. And I used to go and check my mail over there when I didn't have a home computer at that time. So he knew me. I used to come and go. And I said, fine. 2 months later, a married friend of mine was shown the same house, married, as opposed to the IT professional who supposedly had rented the space. That house lay vacant for 2 months. He didn't want to give it to me.
Oh my God.
Because I was gay and I ran Sahodran. I guess he knew, but Sahodran knew I was gay or whatever. So he just didn't want to rent the space to me. He was that clear. The previous landlord, I lasted 11 months.
Oh my God. And it's not even, and you're so low key also. It's just like, it's like, no, you know what I'm saying? There's more.
No, because, by association, I work with the trans community, you understand? So they see like, all my trans friends, staff coming, going. I mean, I can't stop them from coming.
No, you can't. But I do understand because I remember your birthday. You had gone to visit with your trans friends and you had put up a photograph and, it was such a lovely, charming photograph with the group of them. And, I was looking at it and there was someone looking over my shoulder. Okay. And someone who did not have the context of who you are and who those people were. And there was a reaction and I had to explain the context. And this is on a 2021 summer day, so
imagine me looking for a house. Today I think I've got the place I'm living in, my landlord's a really nice man, very understanding because Jaya lives with me, she's trans. I've been there for like more than 15 years because he's open-minded in that sense. And also because it helps that I have a fashion persona. So I kind of showcase my fashion side. My social work side is not seen. So I said, oh, he works in the fashion industry. So that's fine. So that's the only way I'll get a space to rent today. Not because I'm an actor.
Do you feel that is a coping mechanism that you would even advocate to these people, saying, please just have one normal side to yourself, because it almost sounds like counterintuitive, right?
See, we have to survive. At the end of the day, you have to survive. There are no solutions to a lot of these issues, and there's no answer either. So it's each to his own. You somehow have to work your way around it and see. So it worked for me. My fashion persona helped me. So I got the space.
So as we're sort of like wrapping up on, to loop back to why we started this conversation about, how, and you and I talk about trending hashtags quite a lot. In fact, how they are used and more so misused and understood or more so misunderstood. What would be your sort of, and you were continuing to do amazing work and now also broadening your horizons into the digital space, which I think, is the way to go in the future. And, you have so many well-wishers who want to, I know I will continue collaborating with you, whichever part of the world I end up in and, want to be part of your journey. But what would be the advice you would give to somebody wanting to do good work in this space? And, because see, people read a lot of these, they only read the inspiring stories and the heartbreak. I was recently, part of a discussion on Naomi Osaka's decision to to step back out, but she's competing in the Olympics, and that's a conversation for another day. But she's also the highest paid female athlete in the world. So there are people with significant privilege who can come forward and talk about what they need and get it. But here we're in a developing nation. We're talking about masses and masses of damaged people who are just going to get cast aside as statistics because the support systems just aren't there to help them. So what would be the advice that you would give people who want to help so they can actually be successful, before we kind of wrap up, because we're out of time?
I see. It's like putting it in a very crude way. It's like you're reaching out to a child. You just picked up this little orphan child. You don't know anything about that child, and you don't know the back history, the trauma, whatever the child has gone through. And it's a clean slate. You have no clue about this individual. How would you work with that child? Suppose you're supposed to parent that child. It's basically parenting. So if you're willing to take on the onus and the responsibility of parenting an individual, like an orphaned individual, I know I'm putting it in a very dramatic way, but if you look at it, it's like that. So if, as a parent, if I pick up a child off the street and say, okay, I'm going to look after you, and I'm going to be a parent and take you as my child, without knowing anything about that child's history, I will learn to cope with that child's issues and get the help required for that child, right? Because I'm the parent. No institution will have that kind of patience to help that child go through that
and
journey.
where do you put expectations? Because nothing comes free in this world. So I would like to know where. I mean, I know that I'm pushing nerves here, but we do have to wrap.
No, but it's good because you have to ask. You're asking the right questions, and that's the reason why we have this conversation, because then you've asked a question that 100 people would have wanted to ask me these questions, because
so
it's
where
right.
do I put my expectation? If I am to say, okay, I will come out and sponsor, let me not use the word sponsor. Let me say I will rehabilitate 5 people, like whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, okay, let's assume we do it in a non-corporate way. I do it in an empathetic way. I say, okay, I'm going to give, and I'm going to understand, and I'm going to stretch. At which point am I just supposed to be paid back in the understanding that I've done something that is a loss-making venture, or should I just get ready to be disappointed? Or
no,
should I
no
continue
guarantee. That is why in a corporate setting, or from work perspective, I can't give you any guarantee. That's the risk we all take. As an NGO, I'm not answerable to anybody to say, okay, this person will go through so many assignments and do whatever work is cut out for them. If they don't, it doesn't affect me.
Do you get
my job
from people saying that this person has quit, and what? How could you? Does that happen?
No, but I've had this one story that I have, which was a feel-good story.
Please tell it to us, and we can wrap on a feel-good note.
Yeah. So there was this person who was given a job, given his limited, and he's a gay man, so he was given his limited technical capacities. He was given a decent job, and he was happy then. All was fine until one day. So there was this woman in that institution who kept asking him, "You're a young man. You're a nice-looking fellow. I have a sister, and we're from the same denomination. We go to the same church, And she was trying to matchmake with him all the time, and he was paranoid. Okay, so now this is the boy I placed in this institution. So if anything happens, she'll call me and say, "Listen, Sunil, please come and talk to your boy." So I will land up there. I'll have a coffee. I'll come and land up there, and it's a restaurant, so it was easy. I would come there, very innocuously, come like I'm having a coffee, sit there and chat, and then go up to him and say, "Okay, listen, now tell me what's your problem." And I said, "Listen, you have to stay here." So I was there constantly holding his hand, not literally, but just being there for him, because he was scared that somebody would find out he was gay in the workspace. And his fears were not untrue, because one day somebody saw him in a very dubious place. And then he came back to the office and told everybody, "Now I know why this boy doesn't want to get married." And it was a point of discussion within the restaurant. This boy was singled out. He was completely paranoid. He was crying. He didn't want to come to work. And then I was called in. So I said, listen, why are you taking this on you? If the owner wants you, likes you, you're a hardworking person, she doesn't have any issues with you, and she's happy and she wants you to continue. So, it was a blessing, because that lady sat down her complete staff. She had a staff meeting and she said, the next time I hear one more negative comment from any one of you about this individual, you leave him. I will fire you immediately. No questions asked. How many employers will take such a stand?
Correct.
She runs a restaurant. Everybody's highly qualified. You can't sack people because they've taken so many years of training, months of training to reach that efficiency in the restaurant, right? It's hard, especially hospitality. But she took that stand, and she's a dear friend of mine. I love her to death. She took that stand for me, and forever grateful, because she stood by him, because he didn't make any mistake. And He was a very quiet boy. He just came, did his work. He was seen as introverted because he was so scared that somebody would find out. And I said, so what? So he used to tell me, Sunil, you can say that. I can't. Which is true. He said, you can say that. Everyone likes you. You're a fashion person. You're this, you're that. Nobody cares. And the background that I came from. So then that was one story where I went out on a limb for him, because he was my boy. I really liked him as a very sweet, hardworking boy who was not comfortable with his sexuality. So, and I said, you have to take your time. He's from a village. He had issues. In fact, he left the village, came to Chennai because he couldn't deal with what was happening at home. And then he found his way here, and then, so that's what I'm saying. So very rarely, and the establishment was small. It was not a big company. So, for the employee to sit down and say, hey, this is the last time I'm going to hear one nasty word about this person, she could take that call.
So I think what I brought out of this, which is wonderful, and I'm glad you shared this story, so we end on a high note, is that, perhaps smaller organizations, maybe more founder driven, maybe where the entrepreneur is more involved and whose value system lines up with the cause overall, where there is there isn't a huge hierarchy of layer upon layer, where the vision of where we want to take this individual doesn't get lost. So that would be a great place to start. So thank you, Sunil, for sharing. And I'll tell you, I think this is an immensely important topic. And I've like I said, you and me come from a position of privilege. I've had the most wonderful parents, the most wonderful doctors. I wanted to share with you that today, I actually, right before talking to you, met my neck surgeon online, and who will be doing my nose. And obviously this isn't something that I can hide. So, I'm very blasé about, people, because people are always like, oh, I haven't had anything done. I'm just like, honey, I've had things done since before before things became a thing. So, no, but, because of the accident in the background, I do need to, every decade or so, the work that's done in the past does tend to, sort of start melting away, so to speak. So, we need to add some more robustness to my nose, and hopefully this will happen before next year is out. So I met him online, and it was just so and it was when I was coming off of that conversation and came into this one, it's like two different worlds altogether, right? I was discussing my nose with him, and he was like, okay, so when will I see you, and will you be flying to wherever I will be flying to meet him, and we're fixing dates and whatever. And I'm so privileged because my mom was part of the conversation. She was like, yeah. And the only thing she had to say to that doctor was, please give my daughter her life back. And the fact that, they have not just the strength, my parents are in their 60s and, whatever, but they don't not just have the strength, but the motivation and the love, and, and it's an unending love. Even I don't know where that fountain comes from sometimes. And, these people have...
That's exactly my allegory was looking at parenting and a child that you don't know anything about. This is how the situation is when you talk about rehab and people wanting to do something. it's good intentions, large heartedness, all very positive, very nice, coming from the right place. But there's so much work to be done with that child, with that individual, that sometimes, like you said, it's not. Is it cost efficient? I don't think so.
So
So in
on
the
that
long
note,
run,
Sunil, we will have to cut because otherwise you will not be able to upload this video, and
yes,
again it will be
done,
over
done.
time. But we are going to have a follow-up episode where we will talk not just about rehab, but we have a couple of other topics that we definitely have promised each other we will get done before I fly the coop and have to study
Yes,
way too much to have conversations about anything besides finance. So with that, I will love you and leave you, and I'll be sending you the video shortly. Thank you guys for
done.
listening, and please send us your comments.
Bye.